Hello and welcome this to our fraction session. So that is question 6. It gives us a table, and the black numbers are the ones that will be on your exam. The red ones are my scribbles. So we start with a fraction that we have to change into a decimal, and we should also give it as a percentage. So let's start with the fraction. We know a fraction, that line here represents a divided. So in our calculator, we can put in 9/8 or 1/8 or 1 divided by 8. That should give us a, I'm gonna put that slightly up. That should give us, in our calculator, if we put 1 divided by 8, should give us this number, 0.125. So that is now a decimal. Decimal, because it has a decimal point. A fraction is a fraction because here it has this line and divides two numbers. Fraction. Now we need to change this decimal into a percentage number. So percentage. We know that the name per means for every and cent means 100. So for every 100, which means times 100. That means we need to change our dot, our decimal will move towards that direction because that is times 100. Divided would be that direction. So we're going to change that and make that a bigger number, yeah, because that means multiplying. So we're going to 1, because that's 1, 0, and then 1 more. So the dot will end here. That is 12.5%. This is how we got here. You can also use your calculator. You can put in 0.125 times 100, and you will get 12%. In the next section, we have 0.5 as a decimal number. We don't have the fraction or the percentage. We already know times 100 is a percentage number, so that's quite easy. We put in 0.5 times 100 into our calculator, and we get 50%. How do we get to this number? We know how to get from a fraction into decimal. We just divided the top divided by the bottom number. But here we have this decimal number. So how do we get there? Well, for that, you need to have a little bit of background knowledge, and you need to learn this table off by heart. We know 1 can be represented as 100%. 100% can be also 4/4, 5/5, 6/6, 10/10, 100/100, a million over a million. So I think you get it. If the two numbers are the same, it's 1. It's a whole thing. It's a whole pizza, or 100%. If you only have half of it, like 50%, yeah, then it's a half. A half is 50%. If you have a quarter of a pound, you have 25 cents. An eighth is 12%. 5. We also know other numbers as well. If we know what 1/4 is, we can also calculate how much are 3/4. 3/4 are 75, because that's 3 times 25. If we know 1/8 is 12.5%, we know that 2/8 is the double, so that's 25%. You can see we can simplify that, and 25% is also a quarter. And besides of half and quarter and eighth, we can then go also into 16th and so on, but we don't need that. This is enough for our calculation that we have here. we can also play around with tenths and hundredths. So 1/10, just learn this off by heart, is 10%. You can also put it into your calculator and then times 100. You will see it's. Do you remember how to get to a decimal? You need to divide from a fraction to a decimal is 1/10. So you put that into your calculator, but then times 100 in order to get to a percentage. Don't forget that. So then you get 10%. 2/10 is 20%. 3/10 is 30%. 4/10 is 40%. 5/10 and so on. 60, 70, 80, 90%. Let's say we put a 0 here and it's not a tenth, but sometimes we need to go lower, you know, we need less than 10%. Then we have 100 is 1%, because if 1/10 is 10%, then 100 is 1%. We also know, let's say if we change the top number, that 400 is then 4%. So we've established quite a lot of numbers. We have 100, we have 50, we have 25, and so on. We know how to get to 10, 20, 30, and so on. We also know how to get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can build up any number that we like now. If we say 44, we know that it's 4/10 plus, and then 400. Okay? That is 44. If we just want to have one fraction, so we would have to put a 0 here and a 0 there in order to be able to remember, in order to calculate plus and plus, we need to have the same section here. In order to do so, we can add 2 zeros on both sides. We can multiply 100 in order to get, we can do that with here, or actually times 10, that's enough. And then also times 10 here. So that we get to this number. So that's 44 over 100. That's the fraction. So, but besides that, so this is what you would have to learn off by heart. 1/3 can be also expressed as 33.333 forever, endless. So these are all the numbers that you need. So now to go back to here, 0.5 or 50% is 50% is a half. So you can write a half, or you can go in the 10th section and look it up here, and 5/10 would be also 50%, so 5/10. Now we have a percentage number. We know when we have a percent, we have to then divide by 100 in order to get to a decimal number. So you can put that into your calculator. 40 divided by 100 is 0.4. That's it. Now we have the decimal number. And this decimal number, like I said, it's always good for the fraction to check your percentage number. So 40%, we have 40% already somewhere here. So 40% is 4/10. So we're going to write that down here. Here, we start again 2/6. So we put in our calculator 2 divided by 6, because we know the top number divided by the bottom number gives us a decimal number. Once we have the decimal number is 0.3, we can times 100, that is then 30%. In the next section, we have 1.75. That is more than 100. This is because we know, for example, that these are, for example, 50%, 40%, and so on. So it must be more than 100. So it will be something with 100 something. We can check that. We can put that number into the calculator. So 1.75 times 100 equals 175%. Now we want to see a fraction. We know this exceeds our plate that we have. We have 100 here and we have a 75 here. So what we can guess is, like we've done here with the 44 example, we can add them together. We can say it's 1 plus 3/4, because we have 1 is 100% plus 3/4 is 75%. That is an improper fraction. It doesn't say so that you can do it, but I would be on the safe side and I would change an improper fraction to a proper fraction. So how do you do that? A 1, you remember, a whole is 100%, but can be also expressed 4/4, 5/5, 6, and so on. We have quarters here, so what we do is we express that 1 equals 4/4, so that we change that 1 into a fraction. And then we add it together. 4/4 plus 3/4 is 7/4. So we can write that here, or we can also, our outcome could be also 7/4. The last one is 4%. 4%, we've already established that. So we have 100, that is 1%. So 4% is 4 times as much, which means the top number needs to change into 4. 4/100 is 4%. So here we also know how do we get from a percentage into a decimal number. We divide it by 100. So if we do that, we can do 1, 2, 1, 1, and 2. So we end up here with our decimal. And we need to fill up a 0 here and a 0 there in order to make this a valid number. But you can also put it into your calculator to check if that's correct. But it's always good to move the decimal, because then you know for sure you have proved that what you've put into your calculator is correct. So we've got the decimal number now, but how do we get to a fraction? So we can check the 4% is 4/100. So we can put that in here. Number B asks us something completely different, but it's also something about fractions. Pills of a certain drug are supplied in doses of 1/4 milligram and 1/2 milligram. If the patient requires a dose of 1.25 milligram, what combination of pills would you give? So we have 1/4 milligram, which equals to 0.25 milligram. We have 1/2 milligram, so half of 1 milligram. So it's not even 1 milligram. You have to think of this is half of 1 milligram. So it must be something with 0 something, 0.50. We know that from this here. See, a half is 0.5. We don't have 1/4, so I can't show you, but 1/4 would be 0.25. We know that from here. So 25%, if we were to write this down here and make an extra section here, then it would be 0.25 as a decimal number, because it is divided by 100. Okay, so these are now, we've established that 1/4, and that is 1/4. 0.25 is 1/4. So 1/4 of a milligram is 1/2. So is the half of a half. So if you have 1 milligram, that is a whole. If you have 1/2 a milligram, it's 0.5 milligram. If you have 1/2 of a half, it's 0.25 milligram. Okay, So this is how we got to those numbers. This is not going to change. In our exam, the dose will change. The dose of the patient, in this case, it's 1.25. So how do we get to 1.25? That is, we can add them all up or divide them as you like. So I would suggest adding them all up. So 0.50 milligram plus 0.50 milligram. So that is another half. You can write that down here, and another half. That will give us 100. In this case, 1. If we were to add this up, this would be 1 milligram. But we need to give 1 and 25.25 milligram. So we're not there yet. We need to continue with our calculation. Then I would write plus 25, you see? So I need to give a quarter, 0.25 milligram. That is a quarter. When you add that all up, you get to 1.25 in your calculator. Okay, that is what we want to give. And now we check what we've given. We've given a half a tablet, another half a tablet, and a quarter tablet. So the answer is, I have given the patient 2 times a half a tablet and 1 times a quarter tablet. The last section is, it tells us to express 4/10 as a percentage and express a percentage as a fraction. And that is the same as here. You see, fraction and percentage. You know how to get there already. So 4/10, you can look it up here. It might be here, but it might be also on your knowledge chart as well. 4/10 is 40%. But if you want to go the whole way, you can do 100 divided by 10. If you were to have different numbers, you know, then put the bottom number here, write 100 because it's a percentage. So you also need to start, the formula starts with 100. Divided by the bottom number times the top number. And then you get a percentage. In this case, we have 33.33%. You remember, I told you, if you have such a strange long number with 3 3s, it could be a third. So you could write down a third. You could also write down 33 over 100, because that is, you see, we have 100, which is 1%. So if we have 33%, we just need to change the top number. So we leave the 100 and we put the 33 in here. We could say it's 33 over 100. So any number, you know, if it's a percentage, 44%, you know, can be changed into a percentage, percent. You see, this is over 100, because 100 always means percent. So you can write it as this, or you can write it that way. It's the same number. So we did that here with the 33, and we can't really simplify it. If you could, you should do, but we can't. We could write, though, a third, because that's in our knowledge chart, and we can also write a third. So in this case, you can choose between 33 over 100 or 1/3. You can also write both in there. That's also fine.